From the CyberHub bunker in studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Literally not bunker, right? Because it's Monday, May 24th. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I'm in Israel, clearly not in my bunker, right? No Betsy Ross. No, don't threat on me. No usual books. So traveling on the road for the next few weeks, bringing you guys the Practitioner Brief. Joining me today, an awesome friend of the show, one of the brightest, smartest people I know in cybersecurity. And I've had two of them on the last two broadcasts. I had Roger Grimes on Friday, and today I've got Tony Cole, CTO over at Attivo Networks, but also one of the people with the most outstanding experience from the Pentagon to NASA's to everything else you're doing. Tony, welcome to the show. Good morning.
Good morning, James. Thanks for having me. And I have to say that is probably the least annoying countdown timer I have ever seen before a show starts. That one's pretty cool.
It's awesome, right? It's all. We've got a lot of people tuning in live here. Matt Lee saying good morning. Corinne says hello. Avishai, good morning. Roger, morning. And Rob says morning, y'all. And Yisrael Gross, good morning. Hi, good morning to everyone tuning in, joining us live. We've got a packed show today. Tony and I are going to spend the next 10 minutes breaking down 2 or 3 stories that are going on. But if you're tuning in live, if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, please subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform after the fact, please give us a 5-star rating and please follow and subscribe. A lot of you guys tuning in this morning, I absolutely love it. I'm so grateful. Thank you to Attivo Networks for supporting our program. Without companies like Attivo, I wouldn't be able to bring this to you guys every single day. So, Tony, thank the group over at Attivo for their support of the show. And for you taking time out of your day, I know, to join us here. We've got a bunch of comments coming in. We'll pull you guys in here real quick. Infobro, what's up? How's it going over at YouTube? Adam, morning, peeps. Good morning, buddy. And Majd says, hey, guys. Good morning to all of you as well. Before we get started, though, my traditional cup of coffee, my espresso, and here's the beauty of Israel. There's an espresso everywhere I go, and they all taste good. Like, I can't get bad coffee in Israel.
I have to say, the only coffee I have right now is really equates to about this. My espresso machine's not. We can't find what box it's in. We just moved, so we're working on it.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, Tony. Let's get right into today's story, folks. We've got a lot to talk about. First, a story courtesy of the AP, where a Tulsa cybersecurity attack, which is very similar to the Colonial Pipeline, according to some officials, according to Mayor G.T. Bynum over in Tulsa, who he says, I can't share anything other than we know who did it. Apparently, they wanted to talk to us about a ransom would be for them not to announce the attack, and they never engaged. Tony, it seems like there's some sort of shift right now in the public debate around the idea of should we or should we not pay ransom? What are some of the things that we should really keep in mind before we judge kind of these style of attacks in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there's a tremendous amount to unpack around any of these ransomware attacks. One, does a company have the right resources and focus and, executive buy-in, from the board level down to prepare for a ransomware attack to ensure that, they're quickly caught and the impact is mitigated. So maybe they get in, maybe they get to a first system, but you never let them actually steal and exfiltrate any data. That's point one. And I think the other piece is, what is the government doing on their side? We had the executive order come out, not long ago in the United States. I saw lots of international reaction from the United States allies around the globe. And I found it very interesting that this is an area that they intend to try and push even harder on to build cyber norms to prosecute some of these individuals. I mean, we know, from the Colonial pipeline attack, that group shut down after this because of the broad spotlight that went on them. So I think there's a tremendous amount of problems and challenges around this from the organization that's impacted, as well as what governments should be doing to help those organizations prepare and mitigate impact.
Yeah, there's a bunch around that, by the way. I think the biggest story, though, we saw the executive order. I think the Department of Justice ransomware task force is probably going to have the most impact on the reduction of ransomware, and it's going to make a lot of these, I want to call amateur folks, gracefully bow out and become maybe white hat, hackers trying to, build a pen testing business rather than maybe a ransomware group, because they're not going to see the upside to doing that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, we still have the challenge around, have you broken the law when you pay ransomware in your specific country? In the US, you could potentially violate sanctions against an entity. So by paying that ransomware, and that was a really interesting piece that came out, I think it was earlier this year, and it looks like the Biden administration may be setting that aside for now as they try to work through some of the challenges around this. But nevertheless, I think this is going to continue to be problematic for us for at least a couple more years. I'd love to see the amateurs go away. And, somebody posted on the comments there, it's a really good point about insurance sometimes requiring companies to pay ransom, but is that viable for your company? Are you hurting yourself by paying that ransomware? Do you have the backups? Can you recover pretty well? And even if you pay it, will they give you the proper key, or are they going to demand more?
I think that's a great point, which is the idea of do you pay that? And that's a comment from Stephen Semmelroth, by the way. Stephen joining us as well. One of my favorite veterans as well. Good morning from James McQuiggan. Good morning from Tim. And Infobro says it seems that an inordinate number of organizations have a flat network architecture that needs to be addressed.
Good point.
In some cases, yeah, but I think in critical infrastructure, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, the idea of upgrading the infrastructure, that cost is enormous. It's not something that's really viable within a short term, simply because you can't go offline if you're the water system of a city. You can't tell people you're not going to have any water for the next 48 hours while we switch systems.
Well, we can go right back and look at the impact on Colonial when they got attacked, and they had to shut down the parts of the OT system because their IT system couldn't support it. And part of that's rumor mill. They couldn't do proper billing. They wouldn't know how to do the billing with the IT system shut down. So I think it's very problematic. And when you tie these systems together, and the pandemic, as we both know, and I'm sure all the viewers know as well, pandemic kind of accelerated that remote work, even for OT folks using IT systems to access those. That really brought about a slew of new problems across the board where these systems are interconnected. I look at Colonial and other systems, and to me, it's terrifying. What if they had gone after those OT systems and shut it down, for a couple months? Just look at the impact for it just being shut down for a few days. It's terrifying, the challenges that we could have if we had a malicious actor really going after these systems, trying to take them out, for the long term.
It absolutely is. And James says availability is key, and shutting down costs millions a day to upgrade it. Right now they're hitting IT, but if I think they go into OT, it's something different. I want to move to our next story, which is the details disclosed on a critical flaw affecting the Nagios IT software, essentially a legitimate competitor to SolarWinds. Bottom line on this story, folks, is 13 vulnerabilities were discovered in the Nagios network monitoring application that could be abused by an adversary to hijack the infrastructure without any operator intervention. The open source IT infrastructure tool is an analogous to SolarWinds Network Performance Monitor, and it offers monitoring and alerting services for servers, network cards, apps, and services. The issues, which consist of a mix of authenticated RCEs and privilege escalation flaws, were discovered and reported to Nagios in October of 2020, following a which they were remediated in November. Chief among them is CVE 2022-8648 with a CVSS score of 8.8, which concerns an improper input validation into auto discovery component. Tony, you looked at Nagios' website. You actually brought something very cool on pre-show. Share that with the rest of the people, because I think Nagios really handled this well from a transparency perspective, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Kudos to them and the fact that they have now taken all the C impact software and said, here's your web, here's the and the version you want to be, and you're not by that. So then is establishing confidence customers.
Yeah, I mean, we see that specifically here, and sorry, folks, for a little of the internet connectivity challenges we're having this morning with all of you guys tuning in. Both Tony and I are on the road. This is the first broadcast. We're both trying from our new locations, so a little bit of patience, and we'll get through some of these IT issues. But it's just as critical as ever before. While I wait for Tony to get back into the shot here and reset, I will say this. Tomorrow, we'll also be doing a webinar on vendor risk management. Great webinar with Airbnb and Wistic. You can check it out, sign up for that. And Tony, you're back with us?
Yeah, I could hear you the whole time, James. I'm
okay,
not sure
brilliant. Yeah, we lost you
midway
through. So I want you to take it off top, because we lost you right as you started talking about, credit up to them, please.
Yeah, what I was saying was kudos to Nagios for the way they handled this. Trying to reestablish confidence in their software. They took all of their vulnerabilities and have laid them out very prominently on their webpage, along with a version, of software that you need to be at so that you're not impacted by that CVE. So, which is fantastic to me. Working within the community, the transparency. We all know security by obscurity does not work. And when you instead involve the community in solving these problems, it really is a great thing. I remember to go when I was at McAfee and at the antivirus update, cracked on Microsoft file something malicious, and at McAfee at point team, but I would help people restore and recover. So, and I thought that's a time for me when you see these things, working with your customer, any breaches or anything that impacts their environment. I think your customer might point, and hopefully you got all that, because it looks like it's glitching again.
Yeah, it's going back and forth, but I think we got the gist of it, and I'll summarize what Tony said for those who may have not been able to read between the words. But Nagios did a really good job of breaking down these vulnerabilities. They did an absolute bang-up job in creating transparency and trust in the organization, which really should be kind of the playbook for a lot of organizations going forward when they're going through a cyber incident or event. Disclose as much as possible, be extremely transparent. It's only going to build trust in us as security professionals when we know what we're dealing with. We tend to be a little bit more forgiving than judgmental. Would that be a fair assessment, Tony?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, a few more stories here before we got to wrap up, folks. We're on a tight schedule today. So an FBI analyst charged with stealing counterterrorism and cyber threat info. This, according to the DOJ, that indicted an employee of the FBI for illegally removing numerous national security documents and willfully retaining them at her personal residence during a 13 period from June of 04 to December of 17. Kendra Kingsbury, 48, was charged with 2 counts of having unauthorized possession of documents related to national defense. According to an unsealed indictment that was made public on Friday, Kingsbury worked as an intelligence analyst at the FBI's Kansas City division for more than 12 years until her suspension in 2017. Quick reminder, insider threats, still a thing.
Yeah. we see insider threats in many of the annual reports that come out, as there's not as many of them. But what we always have to remember is if you have one, it can be more impactful than many other breaches and ransomware, because you've got somebody who definitely more than likely knows where your crown jewels are, and they're walking out the door with them, whether it's digitally or or on their physical possession when they leave the office. So that's a critical thing we have to think about. Your own employees can cause tremendous damage to your environment. So it's really crucial to continue to work in cyber threat programs. So from physical and logical perspectives.
Yeah, it's it's still a thing. And Matt goes, "Lulz, insider threat still a thing." Most people fall asleep on the insider threat stuff, Matt. You'll be pleasantly surprised how many people fall asleep because they get so distracted with ransomware and malware and vulnerability management and patching that they for a moment forget that there is some sleeper agent sitting within their organization.
Yeah, and people often think, it's much cooler to read about what's happening on the dark web, some nation state coming after you. And people forget sometimes, it could be somebody right there in your own environment, disgruntled or working for a nation state. So, or, financially motivated by, an outside organization that's focused on monetization of your intellectual property. So it's just important to think about. And we've seen a lot of those, and there's not been tremendous coverage on it like there should be, from China and other places where people have gone in and, some professor and stolen tons of research and taken that intellectual property back to China. Hopefully we've got more of a focus on insider threat and people really start understanding the damage it can do to an organization.
That is 100% true, Tony. InfoBro says insider threat is more and more the impetus for zero trust architecture implementation than ransomware. There's a case to be made for that. There's an absolute case to be made for that. I think that's the one time I could agree with something that has zero trust in it.
It is the new buzzword. Just make sure your zero trust doesn't turn into zero functionality. I've heard a couple CISOs tell me that when they first started going down that path. Zero trust meant zero connectivity, and one other said zero functionality.
Yeah, there has to be a balance of zero trust. Matt says, as an MSP of 20,000 plus endpoints, insider threats terrify me and call for huge POLP and RBAC is essential. That's absolutely true, Matt. Yeah. And I believe this here is, let me see, once this refreshes on my screen, but almost all threats are insider threats, according to LinkedIn user. And that's Stephen again. And David says a person can be vetted and cleared and then compromised after the fact. That is also very true. This was an FBI agent for many years. And our final story of the day, folks, as we wrap up, is 100 million Android users hit by rampant cloud leaks. Multiple researchers are showing 23 different apps being compromised that are leaking information. It seems like every week I'm talking about something to do with Android and Android leaks. With a BYOD policy and people working away from home, Tony, do we just outlaw Androids in our environment and just say you're either iOS or you're not getting our company information on your device?
Yeah, some have done that. You what on somebody's box consumer app are also running on the same device. Because they ban it and go to your little things box. Now there aren't vulnerabilities there, so don't throw rocks at me, all the listeners out there. We know there are vulnerabilities in everything, but the point is that inherently it's a little bit better structure when everything's running inside its own sandbox.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned with Android, and we'll be rethinking how I do this going forward. Because Android, to me, it seems like when I do these practitioner briefs, Tony, every single week, if I'm not bringing up an Android vulnerability, an Android leak, or a malicious Android app, it's just not a normal week.
Yeah, it's it's unfortunate that they still haven't gotten things together. And I've heard that Google is working on this challenge. Hopefully, they really move things forward. I think they're going to have to with iOS 14.5 and some of the changes they've made with privacy in there. I'm hopeful that Android is really going to also step into the game, and Google's going to put the resources behind it to make it more secure. Because if not, we're going to see, Apple taking even more of the market with iOS, as people really start to understand the challenges on the Android side currently.
That is 100% true. Folks, I want to thank Tony so much for joining the show with us this morning. We went a little over. I appreciate everyone's patience through work in our first broadcast. Tony in his new place, and I'm in Israel. So, Tony, considering the fact we're both, I think, on Wi-Fi networks we're not really sure of, not too shabby for sure. For a first one, right? Like, it could have gone a lot worse. But with that being said, folks, the awesome, magnificent Tony Cole. Tony, how could people connect with you online?
I'm at No Hacking on Twitter, and I'm William Tony Cole on LinkedIn. So 2 easiest ways to find me: William Tony Cole on LinkedIn and at No Hacking on Twitter. So, and appreciate you having me on the show, James. Always fun working with you. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Absolutely, folks. That's it for us here today. A lot more comments coming in. We'll get to those. I promise I'll address them personally after the end of the show. Until then, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy this week. Have a great week. And by the way, Tony, thank you for your service. Next week, Memorial Day, we'll be bowing our heads, remembering our brothers and sisters in service. So I'll now just say thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you, James. Thank you for yours.
All right, folks, that's it for us here. Enjoy the rest of your week, and most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.